still isn't there. They've had some support, especially from, let's say, the regulatory changes and some of the what they've done on the regulatory side. But in terms of a real solid support from fundamentals, we had industrial profits too over the weekend. They weren't so great. They were disappointing. So it needs a solid few months to show that things have really turned around and that growth is picking up.
Yeah, so a little bit of lack of confidence in China, and I think some of this might be reflected in the bounce in gold that we've seen. And I know that in terms of institutional buying in China, not so much, but in terms of maybe individuals, there may have been a lot of support given to gold, and perhaps that's a little bit of a lack of faith in the currency or also policymakers. So let's look at gold. Let's it took a little bit of a breather in the past week, but what's the real story behind its advance over the past quarter?
Yeah, gold has been quite the key thing that people are scratching their heads over. In terms of, first it was the fact that concerns over inflation, and then what's happening with China as well. But if you think about it, where do a lot of, especially with the property sector in China being in the doldrums, where can people put their wealth in China? So this is why we've seen that rush towards gold and the support from gold there. So you've had the haven bid. Obviously, you've got two wars happening in both in Israel, and then of course what we've seen in Russia, Ukraine. So those political aspects are also adding to the bid for gold. So there's the geopolitical side, but then there's also a demand side from the likes of China. And for now, there's still going to be some support there for gold, especially if you're looking for a haven and if the dollar starts to look overstretched.
So we've talked about a strong American economy and the possibility, in your view, that Europe could be in the process of some type of recovery, especially if we begin to see rate cuts from the ECB. One of the things that has really benefited China has been the demand story from countries like the United States and from regions like the European Union. Is that going to be critical now to allow China to reach its growth target, a really, really strong industrial / export industry?
Well, I think in general, there's been a strong export recovery throughout Asia. So you've seen it in Korea, you've seen it in Taiwan, even in the GDP numbers for Korea that came out about a week ago. That also shows that there's been a strong export recovery. China is no different. So there's been a strong demand side from the West that has been very supportive for exports, and that's likely to continue, especially because you've seen that resilience in growth in the U.S., and also you have the AI boom as a tailwind as well that is also supporting the export recovery. So there's a bit of a confluence of factors that are going to continue on exports, and China's not going to be left behind.
It seems like inflation coming down would be like the gift that keeps on giving if it truly does happen. We just had Andrew Tilton on from Goldman Sachs. He's pretty confident that inflation is coming down in developed markets, including the U.S. I'm curious whether or not you share that confidence, and what are the main